My heart goes out to Bernie, his family. He's a national hero. Inspired me and so many others. And I'm sure he'll be back in no time. He's a very strong human being.
You raised.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you done?
Yeah.
You raised a lot of money compared to what you've raised in previous quarters. So can you just talk about that? If that surprised you, what you think that says about your campaign?
Our campaign is growing by leaps and bounds because more Americans are waking up to the fact that we can build an economy that works for us and waking up to the real problems that got Donald Trump elected. We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in our country's history, the fourth industrial revolution. And if we solve for that, then we can create a positive vision that Americans will get excited about. That is how we beat Donald Trump in 2020. Thrilled that we raised $10 million in the last quarter, and we're going to keep on growing. The sky's the limit for the Yang Gang.
Mr. Yang, much of your pitch about the freedom dividend comes down to, you say Americans are tired of politics as usual, here's something to mix it all up. You spoke, I think, last week about the controversy surrounding Joe Biden and son Hunter Biden. You said it doesn't look good, but one of your competitors, Elizabeth Warren, is running on this idea that there's rampant corruption. You say Donald Trump, because the economy wasn't working well, won in part for right reasons.
And people are fed up with Washington, but continue.
Yeah, well, and it goes, people are fed up with Washington. I mean, do you think the controversy, valid or not, it's a lot of noise, and the people still see it? The noise surrounding Hunter Biden is part of that kind of politics as usual, that Washington, slump, for better or worse, that you think that you're running against?
I don't see it that way at all, in the sense that if Donald Trump is colluding and putting pressure on a foreign leader to try and kneecap a political rival and then suppressing the investigation, like, that is the story. And to the extent that Donald Trump ran on draining the swamp, I can't think of anything swampier than what I just described. It's unfortunate that we've reached this point. I mean, that's actually even worse than swampy. That's like a clear abuse of power. So to me, that's what Americans are seeing and are focused on, and that's where their attention should be.
Mr. Yang, your fundraising shows you're gaining momentum, but what is your path to the nomination when there still are candidates who are pulling in double digits? Like, how do you peel off the support of Biden or Sanders or Warren?
Well, I'd suggest, first of all, it's probably harder to go from total anonymity to 6th or 5th or 4th in the national polls than it is to go from 4th to 1st. So when you ask how am I going to get from 4th to 1st, I would suggest that the harder part has already been done. The second thing is that if you look at Democratic primary voters, they have number one criteria consistently across the board for the nominee. And what is that? Who can beat Donald Trump? I am one of only 2 candidates in the field that 10% or more of Donald Trump voters say they will support in the general election, which means I am the surest bet in the Democratic field to beat Donald Trump in 2020. I was up by 8 points over Donald Trump in a head-to-head matchup in New Hampshire, which is a battleground state. So as more Democrats wake up to the fact that I am the best bet to beat Donald Trump, you're going to see my poll numbers rise and rise and rise. And most Americans are just now tuning into the election. Most Americans are still getting to know me. As they get to know me and my campaign, you'll see us just continue to climb into the polls and the rankings.
2 more questions,
Mr. Yang.
please. 2 more questions.
Do you agree with
Armando!
Hey. Do you agree with Senator Kamala Harris that Do you agree with Senator Kamala Harris that President Trump's Twitter account should be suspended?
I think that there was a case at a certain point, but now that he's the President of the United States, it'd be very difficult to justify suspending his account. To the extent that there was an opportunity, it was before he took office. And even then, the question of who is allowed on a platform like Twitter, in many ways, it's a sign of where we are, where now we have these tech platforms that are serving as, in some ways, the communications vehicle for political leaders and figures. And we're asking the technology companies to make decisions that historically have been in the hands of government. And I've talked to people in Silicon Valley, and at this point, they're actually holding out their hand to say, look, we could use some government input on what we should be doing in some of these gray area cases. And as president, I would work with the tech companies so we're not, frankly, putting the onus on a tech company to make a decision like whether or not the president of the United States can communicate through their platform.
Do you think that his rhetoric kind of goes against their terms of services?
I think there's a legitimate case for that, but I think that that case existed prior to him taking office, and that there was a time that you could legitimately make that argument. After he became president of the United States, it becomes much, much more difficult.
That's it, folks. Thank you.
One more.
Thank you, guys.
Sure, I like her. Go ahead.
You're running against a lot of U.S. senators, and they could potentially be taking center stage in just a few months in this impeachment saga, should it make it to the Senate. Does that help or hurt candidates like yourself that aren't in federal office right now and won't be part of the impeachment conversation?
I am for moving forward with impeachment proceedings for Donald Trump. But I think that anytime we're talking about Donald Trump, it's a victory for Donald Trump. And the job of Democrats has to be to present a positive vision for America that excites everyday Americans around the country. That is my job as candidate for president, and I expect Donald Trump to be there for me to defeat in 2020. I'm certainly not concerned about senators having center stage during the impeachment process. Hopefully some Republicans will seriously engage with the impeachment process. The fact is I've already outperformed several senators and governors and sitting public officials during this campaign. And I don't expect that to change in the days ahead.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
A special shout out goes to our God tier patrons over on Patreon. Zach Sargent, Joshua Hare, Matthew Gerard, Bradley Davis, Chaitanya Malaretti, Jitsen Chang, Kristen Marie, Marshall Hughes, Manuel Correa III, Ashley Shake, Alexandra Dembski, Justin Zhu, Andy Tu, Trevor Russell, Newt Mork, Ahsoka Nelson,
Mike Murdoch, Nerds for Yang,
and Eric Hazelquist. If you would like to hear your name heard at the end of every video on our channel, then become a God tier patron of the show today.